Super Smash Bros. Brawl was easily my most anticipated game for the Wii. Melee was peak and now there was a sequel, with new characters like Snake, Meta Knight, Wally and Marth Cool. But there was something else here, something called the Subspace Emissary, an epic story mode bringing together all these characters to fight a threat bigger than anything ever seen. Now in hindsight, Subspace had many flaws. Some people have jokingly called it the worst Kirby game, which is not entirely wrong, but still it remains one of the coolest things ever made, leaving countless people wishing for a sequel and imagining what it could be like. I was one of those people, going on to create my own grand epic, and it was called Dunkel. It was meant to be Dunkel, as in German for dark, but I was dumb and somehow misspelled it with a G, hence Dunkel. It started as just a slightly tweaked retelling of Subspace, but with my own villain, because Taboo was weird. So instead I created this guy called Dubongon, leader of the Dunkel army. Following that, I spent my childhood drafting various Subspace-like stories. I never wrote any of them down though, they only really existed as maps and lists of characters. While the first one just had Brawl's roster, I would go on to add and remove characters to fit my preferences. Using existing characters at first was fine and all, but inevitably one gets the urge to create something original. I tried putting together a Dunkel using the OCs I had at the time, but they were a bit lacking. There was a stick figure, me as a caveman, some aliens I made in Spore, and my rather basic looking Fakemon. It never went anywhere. The solution to this casting problem came from an unlikely place, the collectible LEGO minifigures. Inspired by how they were just a bunch of nameless archetypes, I began brainstorming my own cast of generic characters. Some of them were directly copying LEGO, some were meant to be legally distinct versions of Smash Bros. Characters, and then there were a bunch of random picks. Stuff like a Squibbon from The Future is Wild, or a carnivorous plant based on the one from Lilo and Stitch, and also a pirate captain based on a life-size Playmobil pirate captain that stood in the living room. Why was there a life-size Playmobil pirate in my living room, you ask? Because my parents have a problem. While at first this brainstorming was just random ideas, I eventually wanted some structure to it. In Brawl, the maximum amount of characters per franchise was 4. Based on that, I divided my characters into groups of 4 that would fit some sort of theme, like sci-fi, medieval, or desert. I of course also needed some big boss monsters, and those also had to somewhat fit these themed groups. As a side note, that giant robot here was heavily based on Galeon from Subspace. In the end, I had 36 characters and 7 boss monsters, one of which being Dubongon, who received a little redesign. With the cast done, I drew a map and made a list of levels. Originally this was meant to be a video game in the vein of Subspace, hence the terminology of bosses and levels. But at some point I decided to make it a comic instead, since that was actually feasible for young me. Now this wasn't the first comic I'd drawn. A notable earlier one was this comic I made for French class in elementary school, featuring a Mexican lizard and a flying fish. What makes Dunkel special though is that it was my first long-form comic with a planned out narrative. Unfortunately I don't have exact dates of when I drew this, but it would at this point be over 10 years ago. Now this comic has some funky quirks. Firstly, there is no dialogue. Subspace didn't have any after all, so why would my imitation? Secondly, the panel layout is kinda weird and confusing because I had the pages turned horizontally rather than vertically. Lastly, things just kinda happen for no reason, because while I did plan out the story, I wasn't very good at doing so. With all this context established, let me take you to the actual comic. Strap in, because this might take a while. We begin at night in a child's bedroom. A stick figure doodled on the floor randomly comes to life. This is Stickman, the protagonist of our story. He assembles a toy dinosaur, a teddy bear and a pet hamster. He then draws an island on the floor and jumps in Mario 64 style with the others following him. Now you see this text box? It says Woanders, which is German for elsewhere. This appears anytime we switch between characters. Get used to it. We cut to a space shuttle flying through orbit. Suddenly a UFO appears and shoots it down. Elsewhere, Stickman wakes up. He sees the Dunkel army, led by a Black Knight, attack a castle. A sword fighter fights them off, but they got a giant robot who just kicks him away. The Dunkel army captures the king and detonates a bomb that sucks the castle into a black hole. Luckily, Stickman manages to escape by climbing a mountain. Elsewhere, in a nearby village, a Bedouin is watching these events unfold. Okay, wait, hold on. Bedouins are nomadic. Why is he living in a village? Also, why is he white? Anyway, he sees that the army is heading for the Pyramid City, so he rides away on his camel to go and warn the pharaoh, who is also white for some reason. A random jackal decides to tag along. Elsewhere, the teddy bear has a massive dick. Actually, he's sitting on a branch. It just looks very unfortunate. He is found by a squibbon who takes him to its nest. Unfortunately, waking up to a tree octopus scares the teddy bear, so he runs away, only to be captured by a hunter who doesn't know how to hold a rifle, it seems. Now the hunter is kinda like Wario, driving around capturing random characters. Elsewhere, under the sea, King Triton was captured by a diver who takes him away on his submarine. A dolphin and a squid pursue to save him, but the dolphin is hit by a torpedo and fucking dies. Elsewhere, a pirate ship is attacked by a kraken, leaving the crew shipwrecked. Do you see how disjointed this whole start is? Elsewhere, Indiana Jones retrieves a golden idol only for it to be eaten by a carnivorous plant. A chase across the river ensues, and hey look, it's the dolphin from earlier. But oh no, a Mokele Mbembe emerges from the water. Luckily, a local pygmy feeds it some broccoli and the day is saved. Okay, time out. This pygmy was based on the mobile game Pocket God. In hindsight, this design was not ideal, let's put it that way. Also, the term pygmy itself is problematic and considered a slur. The fact that he is the only person of color in this whole comic is also not great. Anyway, as the crew celebrates, suddenly the hunter drives past in his jeep with the squibbon in pursuit. Elsewhere, the pirates rush up on shore, where they are found by a sea scorpion. But then a dragon swoops in to kidnap the captain. The scorpion, who can talk apparently, tells the others what happened and together they run off to the rescue. Elsewhere, the Bedouin arrives in the city and warns the pharaoh. But it's too late, as the Dungal army is already here. A phoenix appears to defeat the giant robot by redirecting its heat-seeking missiles back at it. Somehow the army is defeated and the jackal confronts the Black Knight, only for the UFO to swoop in and rescue him. Also, the pharaoh is captured by a giant bird. Also, the remaining Dungal soldiers install another black hole bomb. Luckily, both the jackal and the Bedouin fall through the floor and escape. As the Black Knight flies away in the UFO, he contacts his accomplice, the mad scientist. Elsewhere, the toy dinosaur wakes up and runs into an actual dinosaur, only for both of them to get captured by the hunter. But then the jungle and pirate crews arrive to corner him and he has to flee in his jeep. Luckily, the pygmy calls in some ostriches for everybody to ride on. Also, the pirate crew continues looking for their captain. Elsewhere, the sword fighter is woken up by a mammoth and runs into a dragon slayer as well as the pirate crew. They all agree to go slay the dragon, only for it to set their asses on fire. But the dragon slayer defeats the dragon by hitting it with the blunt side of his axe. Turns out, however, that the pirate captain is fine and the dragon is actually the pet of a friendly serpent man. He knows what's really going on and tells everybody about the Dungal and their secret island base. Elsewhere, the Bedouin and jackal find themselves in some dark catacombs. They meet a golem who directs them into a maze where of course there's a minotaur. Elsewhere, the jungle crew continues pursuing the hunter, and I guess there wasn't an ostrich for the poor toy dinosaur. But then the space shuttle from way at the beginning crashes directly onto the hunter's jeep, with the craters somehow connecting to the catacombs. The hunter is confronted, but like the Black Knight, he is saved by the UFO. The phoenix flies by and gives the squibbon a lift onto the UFO before it flies away to the secret island base. Elsewhere, we finally cut back to Stickman climbing a mountain. Remember how he is supposed to be the main character but hasn't appeared like at all? He meets a caveman who tells him to kill the giant bird. Then they both find a sunbathing yeti who shows them where the bird's nest is. But it has chicks and the pharaoh seems fine actually, so there's no need to kill it. Also, Stickman sees the UFO fly by. Elsewhere, we are still introducing new viewpoint characters, as a penguin is chilling on his iceberg. But oh no, the diver is here to capture him. Luckily, the squid knocks him out, but then a leviathan appears and allows the diver to flee in his submarine. The penguin and squid pursue him into the secret island base. Elsewhere, the UFO lands on the secret island base with the squibbon on top. All three villains assemble and the squibbon runs into the penguin and squid. This whole sequence is a bit confusing because the panel borders look identical to the wall patterns. The trio finds the dungeon with all the captured characters, including an alien and the hamster. So this is never shown, but the alien is the actual owner of the UFO. He got captured before the story started, which is why the Dungal army has it. This is all based on how the Subspace Army had captured the Halberd from Meta Knight off screen. As for the hamster, when Stickman and friends jumped into the map, they were transported to the respective spots they entered. Poor hamster happened to jump onto the secret island base, so he was just captured immediately. Back to the story, the Scribbin frees everybody, disarms the guard and starts blasting. Our heroes confront the villains who are currently talking with Dubongon, the true mastermind. Seeing his minions defeated, he detonates the black hole bomb to suck in the whole island, but our heroes manage to escape. Every character teams up to fly into the black hole and fight the Dungal army head-on. Dubongon reveals himself and an epic fight ensues as every character charges into battle. The Serpent Man tells Stickman to stab Dubongon in his magic chest crystal, which he does. With Dubongon defeated, the black holes close and the Dungal crumbles. Our heroes escape and the submarine is launched out of the closing black hole. This is where the villains were hiding and they are promptly thrown into jail. Except for the diver who instead has to clean up the ocean floor. People start rebuilding and Stickman draws a portal for his friends to return home. Not him though, he stays with the Serpent Man and the carnivorous plant who throws up the golden idol. We end with the forces of the Dungal calling for revenge as they build a giant spaceship. And that's the end of Dungal, except there's more because I made some sequels. Originally I drew this cast of characters for second Dungal, featuring more Lego minifigures and more inappropriate depictions of non-white people. But I wasn't happy with it, so I scrapped it and started again. This time I had the ideas for the themes in mind from the start, so they are actually grouped together correctly. Starting with the elephant in the room, we got Super Mario. Young me really thought he could pull one over on Nintendo by just not putting an M on his head. There's also some reused ideas from the scrapped cast, as well as a bunch of random animals. This is a recurring theme throughout Dungal. Whenever I ran out of ideas for characters, I would just throw in random animals. Then we got the Mexican Moe Lizard and Flying Fish from my French comic I mentioned at the beginning. I decided to bring them back and they were meant to be like the chosen ones or something. Finally there's this guy, eventually named General Robot, who serves as the new main villain. After finishing the new cast, I made an updated map that reflects the events of the first comic while also including new locations, like this flying island called the Garden of Souls, which was actually teased at the end of the first comic. There were of course also new boss monsters, including this cool lava monster based on some random image I found on Google. Now I did start working on a second Dungal comic, but unfortunately I left it unfinished. The story was kinda more of the same. The Dungal army comes back, now led by General Robot and his giant spaceship. They take over the Garden of Souls and our heroes need to assemble the 4 elemental animals to stop them. Several characters and locations from the first comic would also reappear throughout the story. But if you thought the first one was a bit disjointed, the sequel was even worse. I decided to not go over the whole second comic, but some notable highlights are the story starting with the cast having a prophetic dream of someone else having a prophetic vision. This panel of the pharaoh shaking hands with a cow, and Donkey Kong. Also, Bowser gets killed by a tornado.
So long, Bowser!
While this sequel is unfinished, I do still remember the ending I had planned. The heroes would assemble once again to fight Cyber Dubongon, and then after saving the day, they celebrate in the Garden of Souls with the Squid and Scribbin playing Highway to Hell by AC/DC. You would think that it ends there, but no, there's more. The first Avengers movie had just come out, and I recently rewatched all of Justice League Unlimited, so I was feeling the superhero fever, leading to the creation of Dungal superheroes. Stickman and General Robot somehow end up in the real world, where they both assemble a team of superheroes and supervillains respectively. Now, Dungal superheroes is its own can of worms, filled with countless ideas that were never realized, and it's just way too much of a mess for me to cover in any comprehensible way. But wait, there's more! Despite Dungal 2 being unfinished, I planned out a third installment called Dungal War. General Robot is back with an even more cyber Dubongon, but this time we're on the other side of the island. Also, there's no more dancing around licensed characters. The cast just straight up includes a Xenomorph, a Predator, and characters from both Crysis and Mass Effect, both of which were games I watched my brother play at the time. There's also the aliens I made in Spore, Arakshi from Bionicle, and Lagiacrus from Monster Hunter. Needless to say, this also never materialized. But wait, there's still more! Because for some reason I planned out a Dungle 4. I was really running out of steam at this point, because what even are these group themes? This time there was no more Dubongon. Instead, we're in a completely new island that is threatened by something called the Void Kraken. There was also something I called Dungle Bonus, which were just random character groups I drew on the side. It's funny how I could actually get away with including Mickey Mouse if I made these nowadays. Finally, I also ended up drawing boss monsters for all the themes that didn't get one in the actual stories. Looking back, this whole thing is a hot mess. Where do I even begin? Stickman is meant to be the protagonist, but he barely appears or does anything. The initial premise of the toy friends traveling to this other world is immediately dropped and overshadowed by way too many viewpoint characters, most of which do not matter to the plot at all. A bunch of events just happened for no reason, I planned out way too many sequels before even finishing the main story, certain depictions are just very unfortunate, and the whole format of the comic makes it basically incomprehensible to anybody but me. Yet despite all of this, I still look back fondly on Dungle. When I started writing this video, I was thinking of calling it my terrible first comic or something to that extent, you know, for clickbait reasons and all, but I just can't bring myself to do that. Sure, I'll make fun of this comic's many flaws, I'll even say it was a bit shit, but I would never call it terrible. It was a major milestone in my art. Like, I actually finished a comic that was longer than 1 or 2 pages. It was also a massive turning point in my art and served as the origin of many OCs that have stuck around to this very day. The Squibben was kind of a standout star of the comic. Forget Stickman, Squibben was way more of a protagonist throughout the story, and so he would go on to become the protagonist for any future stories I came up with. I would name him Squibby, and inspired by the whole AC/DC bit, he would wield a guitar as a weapon. Due to copyright reasons, he was eventually turned into a regular squid, and I also ended up replacing his guitar with banjo. Squibby became my main OC, and I spent several years working on an RPG Maker game with him as the main character. Now that game was cancelled for various reasons, but the current plan is to eventually make it a webcomic instead. General Robot would also stick around. Renamed to Hyperion, his backstory and personality would change a lot over time, going from villain to edgy anti-hero. He's basically become my very own Shadow the Hedgehog. I even gave him his own Maria now that I think about it. Also, while Dungle 4 was just kinda whatever, the concept of the Void Kraken would evolve into a Galactus-type character for my expanded cosmology. Then there's Dungle Superheroes, which was just a breeding ground for new OCs. Some of them were immediately forgotten about, never seeing the light of day, while others would evolve and prosper, occasionally becoming unrecognizable. But what of Dungle itself? I kinda shelved the whole concept for years, distancing the many stories it spawned from the original source. At some point I even redesigned Stickman because the concept of a living stick figure suddenly seemed way too silly to me. But then a couple years ago I got the sudden urge to remake Dungle. This was actually part of a larger urge of mine to reinvent many of my old forgotten OCs, trying to finally do them justice. In Dungle's case, I initially thought about just remaking the comic, but I kinda struggled with how I should update the story. Towards the end of last year, however, I rediscovered the magic of RPG Maker, mostly thanks to this video by Sonata. My Squid game may have died, but I'm ready to learn from my mistakes. So now I'm working on remaking Dungle as a video game, like it was always meant to be. It's gonna be a small game, and I have no idea when it will be finished, but right now the joy of bringing this story back is all I need. It is kinda ironic how my old comic will be remade as an RPG Maker game, while my old RPG Maker game will be remade as a comic. Going through all of this again was a lot of fun, and I think it serves as a good learning experience. Your first creative work, be that a comic, a game, a written story or a character design, is probably gonna suck. That's just common advice really, but it will serve as an important foundation for whatever else you do down the line. Sometimes a silly idea can blossom into something much greater. And hey, there's nothing wrong with going back later to revisit a story you just couldn't quite realize the way you wanted to at the time. Just make sure you're not being being racist. Thanks for listening to me ramble about my old comic and OCs. This video was a bit longer than the previous ones. But if you enjoyed it, don't forget to like the video and subscribe to my channel. I got plenty ideas for more videos coming down the line, so see you then!